My name is Ron Blauk, and this is Not Complicated. In November of 1999, I found myself sitting in another uncomfortable chair across from someone who was running Scientology-style processing on me yet again. I described the impact the first time I was doing this in episode 7 of This Is Not Complicated. I'd been doing lots of self-work in the intervening 5 years, and I'd flown to North Texas to stay on a ranch owned by a former Scientology organization owner for a month-long class that I was hoping would fix me for good. I was still struggling with integrating the switch in my locus of control described in the prior episode. My Kundalini, discussed in episode 2, was entirely out of control, and there was a lot of life pain I was looking to get rid of. I wanted to be freed up to do great things and create a life I was proud of, but I was still bogged down in my head from a constant backward focus that I had modeled from my mother. You could argue I'm still at it, telling these stories at age 63, and you wouldn't be wrong. Rather than rehashing past pain, I'm telling the tales of the transformative moments. The risen Christ doesn't make sense without the story of the cross, but the point of the story is the risen Christ, not the cross. Something so many people forget when they use the Bible to make sense of their own depressive pasts. Stop mucking about in the crown of thorns and listen to the message of redemption. Few people actually change themselves. I didn't know that yet. I managed to do it, and I found that in the hard moments it was not some idiot guru telling me, "You can do it." It was always a memory of a story from a teacher who described a hard moment they'd triumphed over. The cheerleaders are nice. I'm grateful for those who stepped up. Transformation always occurs when the darkness arises and you choose to step through it into something new. Cheerleading isn't usually the thing that gets you there. It's when you're ready to give up and a voice reminds you there's something of value on the other side and you hang on long enough to make it through that you grow. Often that voice has been a teacher telling a hard story of their own and how they've navigated it. I hope I'm offering the same. Or maybe I'm still stuck in the past and all my decades of work has been for naught. You get to decide, but I'll hope you stick with this tale long enough to get to the point because I'm telling your story as much as I'm telling mine. Perhaps you don't know it yet, or if you do, you don't fully understand it. I hope I'm being helpful, plus it's just good to share this. As you can imagine, I don't get to talk about it much at cocktail parties. In the prior Scientology story, I related a classic self-processing win from running a basic, well-written script that got me to view something from a different perspective, giving me a transcendent moment that killed my old self and generated a new one. This story looks the same from the outside, me sitting across from a guy I barely knew answering questions. But in this instance, it was his years of experience that allowed him to recognize something that was happening the moment it occurred and run with it. His skill opened the door. To my credit, I'd done the work to get myself there sitting across from him. Both things were necessary. I no longer recall the subject matter that triggered this event, but we were going back and forth doing the work when I suddenly got a crystal clear visual of a black, gray, rectangular box in my field of awareness in front of me. Slightly upward and slightly to the right. It was big, size of a car. I said, "I see a box. It's really clear." He paused for a moment and said, "What's in the box?" I instantly replied, "My emotions." The response occurred prior to thought. It arose spontaneously from within, a kind of knowing. I was entirely skeptical of all of it as it was happening, part of me watching me do it. He was wise enough to say, "Let's dissolve the box." I agreed. For the next 5 minutes, we did a series of questions and answers that resulted in the box being completely gone from my awareness. I often ran processes like this one in a really sticky or difficult way. Nothing would undo, everything was gooey. This one was textbook. Solid box at the beginning, no box at the end. We just looked at each other and went on with the next thing. 4 hours later, I was out of my mind. My energy was through the roof. I was pacing. I couldn't think. I couldn't sit still. I tried going back to my room to isolate myself because I was afraid I was going to do something stupid in front of the group. I was laying on my bed, fried out of my mind, trying to get calm, and a coyote howled directly outside the window of the cabin. It sounded like it was in the room. It actually sounded like it was in my head. It was the only time that happened during the entire stay. I was trying to get myself under control after the coyote when I looked up and focused directly on the light bulb in a fixture above the bed, and it exploded. True story, that. No, it was not a coincidence. 26 years later, those emotions are still running around doing emotion things. I'd been a rigid, uptight, fearful asshole and had no idea I'd built a real structural box to lock all of them down until it was gone. The next couple of months were really intense, eventually settling down, but I could feel again after decades of self-protection. I can still feel now. This is a cautionary tale, not a tale of joy, however. I get to feel all the emotions, not just the ones I like. It took me a few years to understand that there was a reason I'd boxed those bastards up, and I'm going to suggest to you that you've got your own container that's keeping things together, and you may want to keep it there rather than remove it, because once it's open, there's no turning back. Perhaps if your karma's such that you get to live just the good parts, it would be an easy win. But if not, you're going to have to learn to adapt to the downsides, and it will require learning and effort. Keep in mind that as Neo got stronger in the Matrix movies, so did Mr. Smith. In the end, the Oracle sacrificed herself to allow them to breach the split and become one. Those movies are documentaries, not entertainment. 5 years later, I found myself laying on the floor in a hotel ballroom in Atlanta with 50 other trainees doing a 4-day workshop on tantric practice with Charles Muir. He's one of the best teachers I ever trained with, truly gifted. Oddly, I didn't like him, but he was a master teacher, and if you get the chance, I suggest you take a workshop if he's still offering them. As I lay there on the first night, I saw and dissolved armor covering my spine. It looked pretty much like the machines in the Star Wars movie, making me laugh and believe it wasn't real, even as I was working with it. It was wrapped around the spine, and it released after an hour of guided self-work. That took everything to the next level, opening me to the most singular enlightenment experience I ever had a few days later. But it also amped up the emotional availability to nearly unbearable levels. It's lovely when it's good, but not so much when it's bad. I've built containers that allow me to function without losing access to the emotions and feelings. They're not the box or the armor that lock them down. They're functional filters that allow me to get things done while everything is running as it's going to run. Would I do it again, knowing what I know now? Absolutely. Having my emotions back has given me some of the greatest moments of my life. Knowing that any of this could possibly be real after a conventional lifetime of normal human responses is as valuable as having the experiences themselves. This is why I'm sharing. Just knowing it could happen is wild. The world is not what it seems. On the bad days, I'm less than thrilled. My current level of spiritual development will not allow me to detach from anything by using manipulation techniques of avoidance, so it all must be experienced. That was the choice I made in August of 2006, described in episode 5. I'm here for the experiences, and opening the box of emotions was one of the first events that made that possible.